Some impulses don't whisper, they roar. Lust is one of them. It can eclipse your logic in seconds, rewrite your priorities, and leave a trace of hunger long after the moment has passed. Brain scans show that during sexual arousal, activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for judgment and impulse control, drops dramatically. In that altered state, even the most rational person may find themselves driven by something primal, magnetic, and overwhelming. From a biological standpoint, it makes sense. Lust is evolution's way of ensuring reproduction. It's driven by surges of testosterone, dopamine, and norepinephrine, biochemical cues that light up the brain's reward circuits, especially the nucleus accumbens. These same neural pathways are also implicated in addiction. That's not just a metaphor. Lust literally hijacks attention, narrows focus, and floods perception with reward-seeking urgency. And yet, some traditions saw something else beneath the heat. In ancient Tantric, Taoist, and yogic systems, this same energy was revered, not as something sinful, but sacred. Lust, they said, was not just a means to pleasure or procreation. It was the raw current of life itself. Left untamed, it can trap a person in cycles of craving and shame. But when understood, when consciously held, it becomes a doorway into clarity, creativity, and even spiritual awakening. So which is it? A chemical compulsion or a hidden power? That's what we're here to explore. This journey will unfold in 3 movements. First, we'll break down the neuroscience, how lust operates in the body, how it manipulates the mind. Then we'll open the spiritual lens, revealing ancient insights that recast desire as a force for transformation. And finally, we'll bring it all home, showing how mindfulness, breath, and embodied awareness can shift us from being ruled by lust to mastering it. Because the truth is, lust will move you. The only question is, will you ride that wave with intention or be dragged by its undertow? Lust begins long before touch. It surges in silence, chemical, electrical, ancient. Deep in the hypothalamus, the command center for survival instincts, signals are dispatched the moment your brain perceives something sexually relevant. Testosterone production ramps up, dopamine begins to flow, norepinephrine sharpens focus, heightens alertness, accelerates heart rate, blood rushes, pupils dilate, and time for a moment seems to bend. From an evolutionary view, this machinery evolved to ensure reproduction. But what's striking isn't just the physical readiness, it's how lust reorganizes consciousness. Brain imaging studies reveal that during sexual arousal, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for decision-making and foresight, shows significant decreases in activity. At the same time, the limbic system, especially the amygdala and nucleus accumbens, lights up like a flare. These regions handle emotional memory and reward. When activated, they pull attention inward, narrowing awareness toward the source of stimulation. It doesn't matter whether the trigger is visual, imagined, or remembered. Once the circuits ignite, reason takes a back seat. In this altered state, desires can become indistinguishable from needs. This is where compulsive patterns often begin, not from moral weakness, but from biology optimized for intensity, not balance. Take the dopamine loop. When dopamine is released in anticipation of reward, it reinforces the behaviors that led to that state. This is why sexual imagery, fantasy, or even suggestive interactions can become addictive. They feed the cycle. And unlike satisfaction, which fades after climax, anticipation is neurochemically thrilling. The brain learns to crave the lead-up more than the payoff. Hormones deepen the spell. Testosterone does way more than spark desire. It amplifies risk-taking, reduces social inhibition, and elevates competitive drive. Estrogen, oxytocin, and vasopressin influence bonding, mood, and receptivity, blurring the lines between lust, affection, and attachment. These biochemical shifts explain why people make choices during sexual arousal that feel alien in hindsight, risking relationships, routines, or reason itself. But not all of this is chaotic. The sheer power of this system reveals something often overlooked. Lust is not just a distraction, it's a command. It steers attention. It alters memory encoding. It modifies moral judgment. It even affects time perception, making moments feel either stretched or erased. This is the gravity of the force we're talking about. It operates quickly, often below the threshold of conscious awareness. That's what makes it so hard to just stop. To override it without understanding it is like trying to steer a vehicle you've never learned to drive. Yet, for all its power, lust is not inherently destructive. The problem isn't the mechanism, it's the absence of awareness inside it. Left unchecked, it can lead to obsession or regret. But acknowledged, studied, and understood, it becomes a signal, a flare from deep within the nervous system pointing toward aliveness. Understanding how lust moves through your body and mind gives you the language to meet it with clarity instead of confusion, and it sets the stage for something more. A recognition that perhaps what biology calls desire, ancient wisdom once called energy, and energy can move in more than one direction. In the oldest spiritual systems, desire was one of the forces deeply explored. Tantric adepts mapped the terrain of lust not as a sin to escape, but as a fire to hold. In their view, the same energy that drives sexual craving is the raw material of transformation. They called it Shakti, a force at once creative, sensual, and divine. It begins in the lower chakras, stirring at the base of the spine, but it doesn't need to stay there. With practice, it can rise. Kundalini, they said, is that rising. A dormant energy coiled like a serpent, waiting to awaken. Each technique channels the current upward, guiding it through the spinal column, the sushumna, past centers of power, feeling, will, and insight. When that energy reaches the crown, the impulse that once sought physical union dissolves into spacious awareness, not suppression, not escape, expansion. Taoist traditions saw something parallel. Sexual essence, or jing, was treated as life's core reserve. Wasting it without awareness was seen as leaking vitality. Preserving it through intention, they taught, strengthened the body and the spirit. Through microcosmic orbit meditations, practitioners would circulate this energy, drawing it from the genitals, up the spine, over the head, and down the front of the body in a continuous loop. Each cycle refined raw drive into alertness, presence, even serenity. This wasn't about celibacy for its own sake. Taoist masters often engaged in sacred partnership, called dual cultivation, not for indulgence, but to balance polar energies, to merge without losing self. Lust, in this context, became a training ground for awareness, to feel arousal and stay present, to touch intensity and remain steady, to hold the energy without discharge, transmute it without resistance. Yogic texts echoed this path in their own language. Brahmacharya, often mistranslated as abstinence, more accurately refers to conduct aligned with one's highest aim. Sexual restraint was seen as energetic economy. Keeping the energy internal conserved it and redirected it toward clarity, willpower, and devotion. All of these systems point toward the same horizon, liberation through understanding. They observe that lust, untamed, scatters. It pulls the mind outward, attaches to image, memory, fantasy. But when met with stillness, the same current that fuels craving can sharpen focus, deepen breath, and magnetize awareness into the present moment when we learn to refine it. Even the urge itself is recontextualized, not as a mistake, but as a signal, a flare from the depths of the body pointing to something alive, potent, and unfinished. In these ancient practices, it means remaining in relationship with desire without being devoured by it. Lust is no longer a thing to chase or fear. It becomes a mirror, a force that, when harnessed, reveals the nervous system's capacity for awe, not just craving. These traditions knew what modern science is only beginning to rediscover, that sexual energy is a source and not just a side effect of being human. How we relate to it determines whether it binds us or liberates something much deeper waiting to move. Power doesn't always feel like power when it first arrives. Sometimes it comes as discomfort, sometimes as pause. The moment you notice desire rising and choose not to obey it automatically, that's the beginning. The nervous system, conditioned for quick reward, won't like that pause. It's trained to associate arousal with action, craving with satisfaction. But awareness can intervene, even subtly. Neuroscience has shown that mindfulness practices, particularly those involving breath and interoception, activate the insula and anterior cingulate cortex, These areas regulate attention, impulse control, and self-awareness. In plain terms, staying present with sensation begins to change your response to it. You must pay attention because this is where transformation begins. When lust moves through the body, the first reflex may be to react, fantasize, chase, and escape. But what if the energy is allowed to stay? Not indulged or repressed, just noticed. This requires a shift from being inside the desire to watching it. That slight separation creates room. Breath deepens. Muscles unclench. The compulsion loosens its grip. Somatic awareness practices make this tangible. By directing attention to the lower abdomen, pelvis, and spine, you begin to feel the charge without collapsing into it. The energy, once aimed outward, becomes available inwardly. It fuels presence rather than pursuit. This is neuroplasticity in motion. Every time you disrupt the automated loop of stimulus and reaction, you carve a new groove in the mind. You teach the body that intensity doesn't have to mean escape. Over time, the system recalibrates. Urge becomes energy. Energy becomes choice. Spiritual traditions have described this for centuries in symbolic language, turning fire into light, desire into devotion. But this isn't metaphor. It's physiology, rewired through intention. Breath is a key. Slow breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, down-regulating stress, softening urgency. This is why breathwork sits at the heart of nearly every path to mastery. It returns you to yourself. It gives you access to your own nervous system without needing to be at war with it. Stillness is another tool. Not passive avoidance, but rooted stillness. The kind that feels sensation fully and moves nothing. From this place, you can witness lust as energy, not identity. The thoughts may still come. The charge may still rise. But they pass through a larger awareness that does not cling. This is what spiritual psychology calls integration. Nothing is pushed away, but nothing rules you either. What once controlled you is now part of your power. Creative work, disciplined practice, intentional solitude. These aren't distractions from desire. The same energy that seeks touch can become focus, insight, or art. The more you train the body to recognize this shift, the easier it becomes to access it under pressure. This is about becoming precise, feeling the pull and remaining clear, letting desire inform you without deciding for you. That's the shape of inner sovereignty. Most people live at the mercy of their urges, not because they're weak, but because they were never taught another way. You now have that option. You don't need to reject lust anymore. You'll now harness it. There's a pulse inside you that doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't explain itself. It just moves, urgent and alive. You've felt it. In the stillness before a kiss, in the ache that refuses to quiet. That's not chaos. That's life, asking if you're ready to meet it fully, not escape it, not be consumed by it, to hold it with presence. Every breath that steadies you is power. Every time you stay instead of run, feel instead of numb, you reclaim something sacred, the courage to remain awake where you were taught to shut down. This isn't about becoming pure. It's about becoming real. Let your desire rise to create through you, with intention and reverence. That fire building in you is not a mistake. It's your birthright, and it's been waiting for you to move, not with fear, but with clarity and grace. Subscribe, and let the next video continue the conversation your soul already started. Thanks for watching.